I said in the beginning of the first part of the alphabet, there are some letters that are not really considered part of the alphabet, but they come in the words, and I'm going to show you them right now. The first one is called Ya Maksura, and it would be pronounced as a letter A, just like Aleph is, but the reason why there's a difference is not because of the pronunciation. It's because of according to how the verb is, and so it's basically dictation. There's no difference in pronunciation. And the reason why this isn't considered a letter would because it never comes in the beginning of the word, and it never comes in the middle of the word. It will only come at the end of the word. And this is how it's written. Sometimes you can write a little small Aleph on top, or you can write it without the Aleph. The point is that it looks exactly like a Ya, it just doesn't have any dots. And since it doesn't come in the beginning or middle of the end, it cannot be considered a friendly or mean letter, since it only comes at the end of the word and no letters come after it. If it was after a mean letter, you would simply write it as shown above, and if it was after a nice letter, you would connect it to the letter before it. The second letter that is not considered part of the alphabet is called ta marbuta, and in English that would translate to a tied ta, as in this ta. And you'll know why it's called that way because of its shape. It's very similar to it, but instead of it being open from the top, it is a circle. The circle form is how it's written if it's after a mean letter, and if it was after a friendly letter, you would write it as shown. Again, for it not being considered part of the alphabet, it will never come in the beginning of the word, and it will never come in the middle of the word. It only comes at the end of the word. It is sometimes pronounced as the letter Ha, the one that's as in H is in house, and sometimes it's pronounced as Ta. As into when it's pronounced as this or that, that'll be in the next video when we take the vowels. Here are some examples of it being after a nice letter, a friendly letter, and this is an example of it being after a mean letter. The other letter that I'd like to show you is called hamza, and it can come alone, or it can come on the waw, or it can come on the ya. It will never come in the beginning of the word unless it's on an Aleph. It can come in the middle of the word and at the end of the word. And if it was if it was alone, it would be a mean letter. This one right here would be considered mean. And the waw would be considered mean as well. But the ya, it would be considered friendly because it would be connected to anything after it. For example, ma. You can see that little at the end, like in the word oh. Yeah, you can see ma. As you can see, this is the ya with the hamza on it. If I were to finish the word, you can see how it changes. And sometimes the hamza is written on top, and sometimes it's written on the bottom. The reason of that, again, is in the lessons of the vowels. This word is called malaika. And so I really hope that you got this part. Now I'm going to be showing you how some letters are written when they are next to each other, some specific letters. Our first example is going to be the letter lam plus the letter mim. If we were to write it the way we know, we would write it with the lam and then the mim after it. And then finish off the word, or if that was the end of the word, we would end it like this. But sometimes it can be written differently. It could be written like this being the lam, and then this the mim. So it's like a little letter B, and then we finish the word. Lamis. which is a girl's name. Or you could find it like this written, as shown here. If you were to write after it a word like lemis, you can find it like that. So don't get confused. It's not the letter meme then lam. It is lam and then meme. And we can see that right now. Yeah, and sin. So you can see how it's written here. Our second group of letters is going to be the letter noon plus the letter jim. To write it normally, we would write it noon and then jim. Sometimes it could be written a bit different. It could be written like this. This being the jim and this being the noon. And this is how it looks on the laptop. And in handwriting, you could find it like this. And sometimes in some books, you also find it in this way. And it doesn't only have to be the letter noon and jim. It could be any of the letters that we have here. It could be ba, ta, tha, ya. And the reason why is because in the middle of the word, all these letters are written like this. And in the beginning of the word, they're written like this. The only difference is the number of dots. This is ba. Put a second one. Sia. This is noon. Ta. Tha. So that's why. And it goes the same way for jim too. It could be jim or ha or ha. Again, all because they're written the same way. So if we were to erase this dot, it's ha. If we were to add a dot on top, it becomes ha. So you can do, as long as it's this form, this could be any of the letters ta, tha, ba, ya, according to where the dot is. This is noon, this is ta, this is tha. If we were to put it underneath, this is ba, this is ya, and this is ha, this is jim, and this is ha. Our third group of letters and our final group is the most important, because the first two groups is optional. You could write it like that, or you could write it the normal way that we learned. But for the third group, you have to write it this way. And these letters are lam and alif. Normally, if we were to write it the way we were taught, lam is connected to what's after it, and then this is how alif is, when it's in the middle or the end of the word. And right now we have like a U shape, and you cannot write it like that. It's wrong. So we would have to write it either this way, this being the lam, and this the alif, or this way, which means lam and alif. A little note here is that this way, you have to write it. You can write either way, if it's after a mean letter or if it's just at the beginning of the word. For right now, these two letters, lam and alif, it means the word no in English. So this is a word by itself. So you can either write it la, or you can write it like this. And also sometimes it comes in the words, for example, the word aqlam, which means pens. So we're going to write aqlam, aqlam. You can see that I use this way. And the reason why I use that way is because it is after a friendly letter. And when it's after a friendly letter, you have to use this way, because you can't connect it. You can't connect it and write it this way. It has to be connected and written this way. But if it was after a mean letter, you could write it this way, as shown here, or this way.